Hey everyone, welcome back on the channel. My name is Alex. In today's video, we are replying questions that you ask in the community tab, in the posts tab, I should say. This is the new name of the community tab about the Adios 9. I will do my best to reply as many questions as I can. And without no further ado, let's tackle the first one. It's not a question actually, just someone says, this color combo looks great. I do agree, it looks nice. I was a bit skeptical at first, but it looks great in person. So yes, it looks good. Will it have durability for daily running like the Adios 8 has? The outside looks more minimalist in comparison with the Adios 8. Good question. I cannot answer this question just now. I mean, based on the running I have, not just on this shoe, but also on the Adios Pro 4, because they share the same outsole pattern and outsole materials, I would assume the durability will be good. It does look a bit more minimalistic. It does look like the rubber is a bit more flimsy compared to the Adios 8, but I believe the durability will be good. Will it be on par with the Adios 8? We shall find out from your inputs and maybe mine if I take this shoe to really high mileage. All right, now we have a comment with many questions. Durability, we just covered it. Is the Lightstrike Pro the same as in the Adios Pro 4 or like in the Adios Pro 3? I don't have the answer to this question. I would assume that it's the same as in the Adios Pro 4. At least it feels like that very modern, last generation Lightstrike Pro. Upper as the Adios Pro 4, yes, it's not the same, but very similar upper to the Adios Pro 4, which is really great news because that's a great upper. How does it compare to Takumi Sen 10 and EVO SL? The Takumi Sen 10 has energy rods that are running, especially in the forefoot, you can really feel them and they stiffen the ride here in the forefoot. This shoe doesn't have any energy rods. It has a small midfoot shank somewhere here, but that's it. So the main difference is that this is requiring much more footwork and it also sits a bit closer to the ground. The Takumi Sen, I think, is 33-27. This is 27-20 in terms of stack height. The upper is much better on this shoe. And hopefully the next generation of the Takumi Sen will also upgrade its upper, because that would be a fantastic advancement for the Takumi Sen line. How does it compare with the EVO SL? We'll come back to that because we have other questions coming from other people and I want to give a fair chance to everyone to get their question on this video. As said before, I like a brief comparison between the Adios 9 and the EVO SL, coming back to that, particularly the ride, feel at threshold and VO2 max level efforts. Good question. The EVO SL does feel much higher compared to this. You bottom out a bit with this shoe, which makes sense. 20 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot, you have some ground feel. The EVO SL doesn't provide you with that. In terms of stability, they are similar. None of them is really very stable because they're also quite narrow in terms of platform width. The upper is much better on the Adios 9. The EVO SL has an upper that is not bad, but not ideal, especially the tongue that is running a bit short and you get some lacing pressure. The EVO SL would have been a killer shoe if it had anything like this upper or the Adios Pro 4 upper. In terms of ride, at threshold and VO2 efforts, at threshold, especially because most of the threshold work you do is a bit longer in terms of duration, the EVO SL shines more simply because you get that extra kick and that extra leg protection. At VO2 max, I would favor the Adios 9 because it is lighter, it is snappier, and it's kind of also more agile. You can really dial in your foot strike and your gait salk more with this shoe compared to the EVO SL. The EVO SL does a good job at all sorts of paces. So if you had to pick one shoe between the two, it would be the EVO SL, I believe, because you can also do some endurance runs and many types of different runs. Whereas the Adios 9 will do some threshold, will do some VO2, but in a, let's say, more aggressive fashion. Question, why should we get this over the EVO SL? Hopefully I just answered that question. You can get the two, but then there's an overlap in the purpose. And if you have to get only one, I would go for the EVO SL. Having all the versions 6 and 7, is it worth buying or may I have to buy the EVO SL? It depends what you're looking for. If you want a replacement for your Adios 6, Adios 7, which are still very relevant, good shoes for intervals, track work, and so on, the Adios 9 is probably that, apples for apples replacement. If you want something that can do more, that is more versatile, then EVO SL. Looks like a Streakfly. How does it compare? The Streakfly is very similar to this indeed. It sits a bit higher to the ground, that is the Streakfly, and surprisingly enough, the Streakfly feels more plush and like the midsole is also softer, which makes it less relevant, in my opinion, for track work, interval work, whereas this has a very compliant midsole, but also very energetic, lots of energy return. It is just superior to the Streakfly, in my opinion. How does the fit compare to the Alphafly 3 width-wise? Well, it's an interesting question. I think the Alphafly 3 fits a bit snugger. At least the material gets closer to your foot and kind of, you know, contours your foot a bit closer, whereas you do have a bit more leeway with the shoe. This is definitely a, you know, race-oriented, fast-running type of fit, so it's not voluminous by any means. But it does have a tiny bit more volume and tiny bit more width compared to the Alphafly 3. Is it roomy and forgiving enough to use for daily miles, or is it too narrow and aggressive for longer, slow miles? I wouldn't use it for daily miles. It's a bit too aggressive. You can, but given, you know, the other options on the market, I would really favor this as your fast running shoe and then have a daily trainer that would absorb 80%, 70% of your mileage. Love the Adios old school racing flats. Yes. Impressions of light traction rubber plus different pace ranges you used it for. The new light traction rubber worked well. And that's not just with this shoe, it worked really well on the Adios Pro 4. I do believe, and that's just my opinion, that Adidas is actually sticking this piece of Continental rubber only for marketing purposes and using Continental's name to kind of make the transition towards light traction. I'm not saying it's working as well as Continental because I haven't tested it for that long of a period compared to the time I've known Continental rubber for, but it's working well. So if I had to summarize, you know, my assessment about its outsole rubber, it didn't fail me, it didn't trick me, I didn't have any bad surprises with it. Let's see how it holds on in time. And let's see also in some very specific cases, like, you know, some wet metal plates on the ground, that sometimes happens. Wet leaves, I've done it. Wet track, I've done it. So it's mostly about durability and some very specific cases. But other than that, I would actually rate it quite high. Is it stiff enough to press and rebound or just stamp and gone? No, it's not too soft. It's not like the Streakfly where you don't get lots of energy return despite it being ZoomX on the Streakfly. This is a foam that is, you know, compliant but offers some good energy return, and it's not dead by any means. How stability and pronation? If you're coming from the Adios 8, this is decreasing, so it offers less stability, and if you are you know, a mild to high pronator, it's probably gonna be a challenging shoe for you to use because it's, you know, quite compliant. Even here in the heel on the medial side, it collapses quite a bit. Again, compared to the Adios 8. That being said, and that's just a, you know, personal point of view, I also believe that some pronation is good. At least some, you know, some less stable shoes are good in your rotation because they make your legs work differently, and that allows you also to work on your weaknesses and so on. Especially for shoes that you use just a little bit in your rotation. Fast running shoes, interval shoes are not meant to be your daily bread and butter. So yeah, I think it's less stable, but if you want to kind of work on your weaknesses and on some new strength, maybe a shoe that is a bit less stable can do the trick. But yes, it is less stable than the Adios 8, and in general, it's not very stable. When will other models update in the Adidas Zero lineup? I don't know. If as soon as I will know, you will probably know, if that makes sense. With the softer bouncier foam, does it ride more like the PUMA Liberate than the previous Adios? Is it as wide as the Takumi Sen 10 or more nimble like the Takumi Sen 8? That's a good question. Lots of questions in the question. It does ride a bit closer to the Liberate than to the Adios 8, yes. It's been a long time since I used my Liberate, so, you know, don't quote me on that, but that's just my educated guess. And then the second question, how does it compare to the Sen 8 or Sen 10? It's probably closer to the Sen 8. But again, it's been a while, I haven't used my Sen 8, so don't quote me on that. Not related to the Adios, but I really hope this colorway is available on the Pro 4 in Europe, question mark. I don't know. If I know, I will share it with you on YouTube. Does it have the same heel slip issues as lots of Adidas shoes? In every category, they seem to have this for years. This heel is superb. I find it comfortable. I find it offering a good, up to very good lockdown, not perfect lockdown, but very good lockdown. And I don't have any issues with the heel. I do see what you mean, especially, you know, the previous Boston, the previous Adios, previous Adios Pro 3. I really didn't like the heel. It wasn't really about slippage, but some kind of heel movement and not a pleasant feel in the heel cups of these shoes. This is much, much better. Quote unquote, racing flat. Is it actually good for racing 5K, 10K distances over a shoe like the Adios Pro 4? No, I would race in the Adios Pro 4 simply because it is proven that more foam offers more efficiency and running economy is improved also with a bit more foam that is making some of the work for you, not all of the work obviously, but just helping you a bit. So good training shoe, but I wouldn't race a 5K or a 10K in this shoe. Back in the days, the Adios 6 was track legal because it was less than 25 millimeters, and that was the rule for 10,000 meters, 5,000 meters on the track. So maybe I would have considered the Adios 6 or Adios 7 for that matter on the track back in the days. Now this is not track legal anymore, and I wouldn't race with it on the road, if that makes sense. Upgrades, downgrades compared to Adios 8, much better upper like day and night. This is a stellar upper, no more torsion plate, a full length Lightstrike Pro midsole, whereas the Adios 8 had that Lightstrike 2.0 in the heel and Lightstrike Pro in the forefoot. The rubber is also changed, now it's light traction rubber. Overall, better shoe, there's no question. Why did they go with silver? I don't know, but it does look good in person. Comparison with other low stack racers. I think we covered the Liberate, the Streakfly earlier in the video. It's probably, you know, the Streakfly, the Liberate, the Saucony Sinister, but I mean, I would tend to say this is probably kind of the new king in that low stack racer category. If you have other shoes in mind, there's probably a ton, which I don't have right now out of the top of my head. Put them in the comments and I will try to revert to you as much as I can. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope I answered as many questions as possible, as many different questions as possible as well. Sorry if your question wasn't featured. That's probably because it was similar, redundant to a question that was already covered in this video. If you like this format, like the video, subscribe, that helps the channel. Thanks a lot for watching, and let's link to the review of the Adios Pro 4. Have a great one.